How to create a pawn break in chess. Imagine your pawn chain is like a fortress, and you want to find the right moment to break through its walls. That's what creating a pawn break is all about. It's a move that challenges your opponent's pawn structure, opens lines for your pieces, and can shift the game in your favor. To do this well, you need to understand your pawn formation and spot the perfect time to push forward. Start by looking at your pawn structure and your opponent's. Are there pawns that are blocked by your own pawns? Are there weak spots or isolated pawns that you can target? Your goal is to find a pawn that can advance to attack or exchange, creating weaknesses in your opponent's position. Think of it as a strategic push that can open up files or diagonals for your rooks, bishops, or queens. Next, assess your control of the center and key squares. Before making a pawn break, make sure your pieces are well placed to support the move. For example, if you want to push a pawn on the flank, your knights and bishops should be ready to jump into active squares afterward. Rooks should be lined up on open or semi-open files, waiting for the lines to open up. Choosing the right pawn to push is important. Central pawns like d4 or e4 are common targets for pawn breaks because they influence the middle of the board. Flank pawns like c4 or f4 can also be effective, especially in certain openings or attacking setups. Your aim is to open lines that benefit your pieces and create weaknesses in your opponent's camp. Timing is everything. Don't push your pawn too early or too late. Wait until you have enough control of the center or when your opponent's pieces are less prepared to respond. A well-timed pawn break can force your opponent into uncomfortable positions, making their pawns vulnerable or creating open lines for your attack. Using pawn breaks to create weaknesses is a key part of good strategy. They can lead to backward pawns, isolated pawns, or doubled pawns in your opponent's position. These are targets you can attack later with your pieces. Also, if you have a space advantage, your pawn break will be more effective because your pieces can support the advance more easily. For example, in a queen's gambit position, pushing d for d5 challenges the center and can open lines for your rooks and queens. On the king side, pushing f for f5 can initiate an attack if your pieces are ready. On the queen side, c4 c5 can open the file for your rooks and create pressure. In the endgame, pawn breaks are often used to create passed pawns. By advancing a pawn against your opponent's pawns, you can force exchanges and open a path for your pawn to promote. Remember, creating a pawn break is about careful planning, timing, and understanding your pawn structure. When done correctly, it can turn a solid position into a winning one by opening lines and weakening your opponent's defenses.